You're listening to Woosox Insider, presented by your Worcester Red Sox.
All right, hello and welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Woosox Insider podcast. As always, I'm here with Chris Bergstrom and Dylan McCaffrey. Today, our special guest is Dan Rea, the Executive Vice President, right? I probably should ask that before we started recording.
Yeah, you've got it mostly right. Don't worry about my title. It's long and cumbersome, so no need to say it all.
I've had your LinkedIn open all day. He is the Executive Vice President of Business and Real Estate and the General Manager of the Worcester Red Sox.
That is quite a mouthful.
LinkedIn stalking. Good job, Jeff.
You look like a LinkedIn sponsored message in somebody's inbox, right?
I mean, for those of you,
a little speech bubble next to my head.
For those of you who are just listening and not watching, like Decaf is looking good today. My man, picture day for an office headshots, and he's looking good.
I just wanted to take a chance to outdress you, Chris. I know how much you love when people wear suits and you're showing up in your polos.
Yeah,
giving you the Steve Oliveira treatment.
Yeah, the Steve Oliveira treatment. We'll get him back on that this opening day, so that's fine.
I think what really separates, though, Decaf has a tie on too, which many of us are a little more dressed up for picture day. I've got the open collar, decent shirt, but Decaf went tie and everything, so that separates the men from the boys here.
They say dress for the job you want. I came in dressed a lot like Dr. Charles today.
Dan, while we're on the topic, I will say you bring some heat during the season. Your suit game is very strong. I've seen some seersucker out of you. You have a maroon blazer. I'm pretty jealous of some of the stuff you have in your closet.
Yeah, I'm a jacket person. I'm not a tie person. So you'll see me maybe twice a year in a tie. Ties are for opening day, weddings, and funerals, basically. But between that, I do like to go with the open collar shirt and some sort of sport jacket. So that's typically my way of doing it. But I've left ties back in like prep school days. That's for Charles and Decaf and the heavy hitters here.
GQ is going to need to borrow some of your style for his Nesson hits this year. We can't have him going on air without the swag like he did last year.
No, in my older brother's suits, because I didn't have any that fit me anymore.
That's what I'm referring to. Yes.
Taper those.
Dan, while we have you on, we want to talk about, obviously you have a great relationship with the city and you do so much for us here at the Worcester Red Sox. I would say you're one of the unsung heroes that's not necessarily in front of the camera as much, or like Larry Lucchino in the newspaper articles as much as some of the other guys at the top of the organization. But what goes into moving a team from one city to another? Because it's not just location scouting.
It's easy though, right? You just build a ballpark and call it a day. That's what we did, right?
Basically, yeah. Basically, with a few other things thrown into the mix. I think we are, as I'm sure other podcast guests and you guys have attested to, we are a big band here with a lot of people, a lot of talents, a lot of different, very skilled individuals in our front office. And, I think people don't always realize how many folks are behind the scenes of an operation like ours, how many people we had in Pawtucket. And when we made the decision to move the team from Pawtucket to Worcester, at the time, I didn't know how many people would be coming with us up here to Worcester. And I've been, I think, really pleasantly surprised by how many people have made the trek, made the journey with us up 146 and have stayed in the front office here. So we have a group of, 45, 50 people. And I think one of Larry's geniuses is that he solicits feedback and opinions of everyone in the front office, and everyone has an opportunity to vocalize what they feel. And we went through that. And you guys saw it when we were making the decision 3 years ago. We were being, I think, very solicitous of feedback from different areas of the front office. We brought a group up to Worcester, actually, a group of maybe 6 or 7 of us, Jack Verducci, Kim Miner, Bart Harvey, a handful of us came up to Worcester and did a few nights here in Worcester of just going to bars and restaurants, seeing what the scene was like. And that was necessary because I grew up in a little town about halfway between Worcester and Boston called Sherborne. And Sherborne, you would go to Worcester Ice Cats games as a kid, but Worcester for me was still this, kind of blue collar, very gritty city that had a lot of charm to it. But the question of whether it could support a minor league baseball team, a AAA baseball team affiliated with the Boston Red Sox, was kind of an open question. So we had to spend a lot of time here really immersing ourselves in the city. And I think Charles, to his credit, has done that. Larry's done that. We've all done that. And I think we needed to make sure that around the proverbial table here, everyone felt really good about this decision because it was a huge consequential decision. It had implications for the folks back in Pawtucket who we have a lot of affection for and a lot of respect for. But if you're going to move a team, even 45 minutes up the road, you need to make sure that it works for everyone in the coalition. And I think that's, again, something we really have taken from Larry's example of building consensus internally and then going out into the community and being really visible and really prominent as you make a move like this one.
I feel like an outsider in this sense because I was working for the team in 2019, but you've got you in 2019 and 2020 trying to figure out moving a ballpark, and you've got Chris Bergstrom and Tim Kudadamo just saying, please be Worcester, please be Worcester, please be Worcester, please be Worcester.
And my dad, but that's okay.
Yeah, it's tough because you're you're going to be pleasing a lot of people and also disappointing a lot of people, and that's not something that we took lightly. I think Larry was probably the best of anyone at really giving it as much thought and as much deliberation as possible. Larry's someone who never rushes a decision, and for those of us who work with him on a regular basis, that can mean he's editing 20 different drafts of something you write for him, and it can drive you a little nuts. It can make you pull out your hair at certain times, but I think that's actually a really good quality because we could say earnestly to the people of Pawtucket and Rhode Island, hey, we gave this every chance we had, and this Worcester decision wasn't made lightly. We weren't flippant about it. We didn't say, we'll move up the road and didn't think anything else about the decision. We really went through a thought process, a deliberative thought process to make sure that we were making this decision for the right reasons.
And your relationship with Larry goes back more than a decade. I was talking to Dr. Charles today about when he first met you. He said it was opening day 2005. You first got to shake hands with Dr. Charles. Do you remember when you first met Larry and got to meet him?
Yeah, I don't know if I have the exact date I met Larry. I met Charles opening day 2005, as you said, Dylan. That was a day that I'm sure for Charles in his career was probably a top 10 day for him.
Yeah.
Celebrating the Boston Red Sox first world championship in 86 years. So the fact that Charles,
and the day that he met you,
the day that he met me, and I joke, but I'm not joking about this. Like for him to give me 5 minutes of his time, let alone I think the 10 or 15 minutes that he gave me on that day of all days, has really stuck with me. And in sort of a pay it forward way, you're never too busy to give someone the time of day and talk to them and give them some thoughts. And he was incredibly generous just to talk to me that day while he was probably balancing 100 other things to get ready for the pregame ceremonies of April 2005. So I met Charles. I stayed in touch with Charles probably for the following 7 or 8 months, just going through job interviews and shadow days. Then got an entry-level job with the Red Sox as a Fenway ambassador, and was able to do that because I was going to school down the Red Line over at Harvard, and so I was able to be at Fenway just a whole lot. I think that's probably where I crossed paths with Chris for the first time, sometime in the late 2000s, early 2010s.
It's not an Ice Cats game earlier.
It may be.
Life, and you didn't even know it.
Could have been
if you saw,
intersections of fate that they definitely.
Did you ever meet Scratch? Because chances are,
I think I did. Yeah, I think I had a 10th or 11th birthday here, and I think he made an appearance there. So,
and I was like, this kid right here is going to make the most important impact in Worcester. Years down the road.
This guy will be part of the team that you guys are going to get in 8 or 9 years or so.
Yep.
But yeah, so Chris and I met, I got a chance as part of the Red Sox front office to be part of things and see the inner workings and get to meet people like Chris. And then I probably at some point in my college time while I was still working part-time with the Red Sox, got to interact with Larry. And I was, again, a Fenway ambassador. So, equivalent to our ambassadors here at Polar Park, you're dealing with pregame ceremonies, and you're dealing with World Series parades. When we did the World Series parade, that was really cool. And I think one of my first times dealing with Larry was actually in the midst of a ceremony down in the field at Fenway Park. And Larry is very detail oriented and very concrete and very literal. So I had to place Larry exactly where to go during a ceremony. I think it was maybe something with Beth Israel Deaconess Hospital, where we had players and nurses and doctors and Red Sox scholars all walking out together out to the field. And let's just say Larry was not, sparing in his questions or, exactly where do I have to be? What am I doing? Am I greeting the people? Am I giving them something? What am I saying to them? I mean, he had a lot of questions. And so from that point, I was like, okay, this is a guy who, definitely cares about how things come across and cares about the quality of the production. And I think that, as you guys know well, that continues very much to this day. But I think there was something in me that realized, someone like that is the type of person that you want to work for, because they care so much about the end product and the end result. So I got to know Larry through that way initially. And then when I graduated from school, I took on a role as the team historian with the Red Sox. Like to say that I was the probably youngest team historian in the history of baseball team historians. Most are probably 70 something years old, and I was 22, 23. Yeah. But I did that for a couple of years. I got to know Larry really well because we were coordinating the 100th anniversary of Fenway Park.
Right.
Larry was very immersed in that, very detail oriented about that whole effort. And then coming out of that, the nice thing about being a coordinator of a 100th anniversary year is you get to do that, but the downside is your job kind of runs its course. And so Larry then at the end of that season said to me, hey, I'm looking for a new special assistant, someone to fill sort of a chief of staff role. And that's how then I got fully engaged with Larry. So just kind of bouncing from point to point and finding opportunities along the way is part of kind of, I guess, my story with things here.
Nice.
A lot of roads
they
all lead to Worcester.
Yeah, they really do. I think a really poignant thing that you mentioned was Larry's attention to detail. Sometimes it can get a little frustrating when you're sending back drafts, but it really isn't for him. It's not for us. It's for the fans. It's making sure that what we believe in comes across to everybody without any doubts. So it's cool to hear those stories of even in the midst of being on the field for a pregame ceremony, he's worried about making sure that these players and medical staff are being treated the way that he wants them to be treated and being honored the way they should be honored. So it's great to hear that that's carried on throughout Larry's entire career, whether it's Boston, San Diego, Worcester, Baltimore, wherever.
Yeah, I think Charles will attest that started the moment they met in Baltimore. And, I think you hear the phrase like the tyranny of low expectations. And I think there's some truth to that like, you need to keep your standards really high, and you don't just do it, for self-gratification purposes. You do it because you're representing a product, that you want to come across really well to people. And I think that matters. I think it matters to, in that case, the nurses and the doctors who have a memory. And if you screw it up, I mean, I've definitely we've seen the ceremonies where it's like they're just mailing it in. It compromises that person's experience. It compromises how people look at you. So you have to do it at a really high level. It's exhausting. It's exhaustive in Larry's case, but I think he's built a Hall of Fame career on that. And that's been one of the secrets to his success he's had.
Absolutely. And in looking at what has been accomplished here at this ballpark, I remember standing here when it was just a parking lot. And I remember I didn't come back until 2021 when it was somewhat of a template for how this place was going to look. But there was a long time between a parking lot and the structure you see today. I know when we come in each morning, we go through some construction lots that are going on across the street that you're heavily involved with. It's hard to picture when they're just in their construction stages. I'm sure everyone remembers when they were driving by Polar Park in its first stages. And so now we're kind of at the same place with the places across the street. Do you know when and what it'll look like when it's completed and when it's going to be completed?
So hopefully it will be a busy part of the neighborhood. I like to think of it as an extension of the Canal District, and also then merging hopefully well with the Green Island Boulevard and Green Island neighborhood as well. So, hopefully it will be a bustling commercial corridor with street front retail, local brands, some national brands, but a street front retail scene. We have 230 market rate apartments that are under construction right now. So those will be opening in 2023, probably second or third quarter of 2023. We're talking with Holy Cross about student housing down there potentially. So you could have student housing, which I think would be a really nice feature to have just in the area if you have, 100, 200 units with students living in them as well. So I think it'll be really this interesting new residential neighborhood. And then across the street, there will be a biotech building that we're hoping to get up in the next couple of years with young biotech companies. At the street corner, there'll be a hotel there. So it really will be, I think, a big extension of the neighborhood. And I struggle to visualize things. I'm not the very visual person. So that's why you have architects and engineers who put that together. But the way that we've looked at it is that it's really additive to the ballpark. It improves the ballpark atmosphere when you have hundreds of people living there, working there. the phrase they use in real estate, and it's a little bit of a cliche at this point, is live and work and play. Live, work, play districts are what you hear about a lot of cities trying to introduce. And ideally, it's a place where people can come, enjoy the scene, enjoy the ambiance, live there if they want to, or just visit it and feel like they're welcome. So that's what it will hopefully look like if we pull it off the right way. I'd say we're in probably the third inning, if that, the bottom of the second, top of the third inning of this story. So it's going to look a lot different than it looks today, but hopefully it'll be a really good addition to this neighborhood.
I've learned to trust the process because when I first saw the pictures of Polar Park, I'd been to the parking lot and then I saw a rendering of Polar Park and I was like, yeah, right. Like
I was the same way.
How is this going to fit? How is this going to get done? And I'm looking at it right now and it fits and it's beautiful. And so we have some renderings of what these are going to look like. And if it comes close to what the projections are, then this area is going to be completely unrecognizable if you look back from before all this started.
Yeah. And I think, Polar Park was tricky because it was built into the side of a 50-foot hill. So that for me, the visualization was always very difficult. And that's where you had to rely on the architectural team to really trust them. We can fit in right field, center field, and left field. We can fit in the dimensions. We can fit in the foul poles. But it's a bit of a leap of faith when you're working with groups like that, because I don't have that ability. I mean, I remember going online very early when we were looking at this area, and there's a software program called ArcGIS, which just shows you maps and things. You can draw out acreage and square footage. So I remember, I think I was sitting at Logan Airport about to hop on a flight. This was very early stage, and I was like, can this site actually fit a ballpark? And kind of realizing how it would all orient itself, but not my specialty at all. The thing about the other side of the project street here, where we have the development, is it's a much flatter land.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit easier to just kind of picture, okay, you're going to put in these, you have massing models in architecture, and then you start to fill in the massing models and you see how it starts to come up. So I can visualize that a little bit better, but again, I'm not anywhere close to an architect. So that's why you have smart people on the team to put it together and figure out how all the pieces fit into the puzzle.
Right. You can't have people like me making those designs, because I thought the right field wall was going to be 225 feet away from home plate. It just didn't add up to me when I was first looking at it. But here it is. It's beautiful. You can walk down from Summit Street to the first row of the Worcester wall, and you're still 22 feet above the playing surface. So it ended up great. Chris, what do you got?
Yeah, just kind of switching the baseball a little bit. I mean, Dan, I know part of your responsibilities are managing that relationship between the Woosox and the Boston Red Sox. So how does that work on a day-to-day basis, say during the season, and actually throw in a pandemic there too when we're trying to switch and move to Worcester?
Yeah, I mean, I think people hear the name or the term general manager and they think making trades and free agent signings. That's definitively not what I do. Leave that again to smarter people than me who have more expertise and training in that. So, I liken my job more to like a head of operations, chief operating officer, and a liaison to the Red Sox. So we work very closely with the Red Sox, with the farm director, Brian Abraham, who is a Holy Cross grad. I don't know if you guys have had outside guests on the podcast yet, but I would definitely recommend having Abe's on at some point, because he's a guy who grew up here, played locally, went to Holy Cross, and has worked his way up in the Red Sox organization. So Brian is our director of player development. Ben Crockett, who was the player development director, now a SVP of baseball operations, is also involved. And we deal with the whole group there in the player development realm, talking with them pretty much on a daily basis, and just making sure that we are providing the amenities and the resources that they need to do their job and to promote players and develop players. So I like to say probably 80% of my job is business and 20% is baseball, but that 20% that's baseball is really important. We need to make sure that, the clubhouse is being run the right way, which Mario does a great job with. Our travel that Carol Krasnowski oversees is doing its job. All the player amenities, the food that we're feeding the players, the quality of the resources around here to support the baseball program are really top notch. And the Red Sox, to their credit, they are, again, maybe in the Larry kind of vein, very detail oriented. They don't let anything slip. If there's a meal in the clubhouse that isn't up to their quality, they'll let us know. They'll tell us, hey, players thought the meal today didn't have enough healthy options as part of it. So they really dig into it and they keep us on our toes, and we try to keep them updated on everything and apprised so that we're not letting anything slip. It really has to be a very tight relationship that way. And I think that's probably where the best relationships in baseball in terms of major and minor league collaborations, where those come from. I've heard of organizations that struggle, frankly, to communicate with their big league club or vice versa. And I think it comes down to communication, as cliched as that might seem. You want to be in touch with those guys pretty much nonstop, and just how can we help them? They help us. They were very supportive of the move, very supportive of our rationale for coming here. So when you have a relationship like that, you just need to nurture it and keep it alive, pretty much every day with communication.
He tried to stay low profile, but I did see Chaim Bloom take some trips down to Polar Park last year. We're on the broadcast just watching. Say, is that Chaim Bloom just in the 10th row? So yeah, it's awesome that you get to have a hand in that and be the focal point for those guys. And not just with those guys, with all of MILB. Like you're out there talking to the umpires, you're representing us at these award ceremonies where they just can't stop giving us awards. You get to do a lot.
Yeah, it's again, I'd say it's collaborative. It's collaborative with baseball. The folks at Major League Baseball now who are very involved with us. We have a gentleman by the name of Ronnie Richardson, who's sort of our supervisor of this league that we're in now. And Ronnie is great, very communicative with us. And like you said, Dylan, like Chaim Bloom takes a very keen interest in us. He actually came up through the Tampa Bay organization as a player development guy. So I think he has a special affinity for minor league baseball. And when he came here, I mean, he was very engaged. Brian O'Halloran, our general manager with the Red Sox, similarly, very engaged. Raquel Ferreira, Eddie Romero. I mean, it's a group that really buys into the value of having a strong relationship with all your affiliates. So we're lucky in that regard. I think there are a number of well-run organizations out there, but I think we are, among the best when it comes to the quality of people who are leading us on the baseball side. And I think that should be very comforting to Red Sox fans.
Definitely.
And there's also a rumor out there that you're an expert on the weather, especially here in Worcester.
Yeah, I don't know if expert's the right word for that. Chris,
I bet you some people could see you pacing back and forth this year if they were at a game where it was about to rain or was raining.
We gotta set the record straight, because everyone that has pitchforks and torches doesn't know where to point them. Dan Ray might be the guy unless he can clean it up right now.
with the target on my back or tire tracks on my back. Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm the expert at the weather. I'm some sort of weather person. Amateur meteorologist or whatever you want to call it.
By this point, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, definitely an expert in about half a dozen weather apps, and I think that's probably adds to the challenge of it. Because everyone has a weather app nowadays, so every fan has a weather app. I can tell you every coach, every opposing manager and player has a weather app, and they will tell you when you tell them, we're going to go into a rain delay because there's rain coming at us in 10 minutes. They'll let you know why their weather app is better than yours. So it's not easy. I think Worcester has a particular climate that I'm still trying to figure out, where stuff can appear out of nowhere. I mean, there was one game last year where we looked at the weather, and we typically will look at it about 20, 30 minutes before first pitch, because that's the point at which the pitchers have to start going up and getting warmed up. So you have to make a decision whether you can start the game on time at that point. And we had looked at it, and it was clear as a bell. And as we're walking off the field after play ball had been said and the anthem had been sung, we're walking off the field 20 minutes later, about 5 minutes before first pitch, and there's a huge storm 10 miles down 146 coming at us. I think that was in July, and that was a game where we paused it in, I think, the bottom of the first inning when we just got a torrential downpour. And that's like the nightmare scenario, because what you try to do in these discussions, and they're collaborative, you're talking to the Red Sox and to the manager on our side, you're talking to the other team, you're talking to Major League Baseball. It's a multi-pronged conversation, but basically you're aiming to start a game and get in 3 or 4 innings of baseball, because you don't want to burn a starting pitcher. That's a cardinal sin, particularly of AAA baseball. So you're looking for basically an hour and a half long window, that 30-minute buffer before the game, so pitchers can get out there, and then at least an hour to play a few innings of baseball. And other parts of the country might have this a little bit easier than we have it. Trying to guarantee an hour and a half of good weather is really difficult in the summer, just with the way that storms percolate and come together and hit you out of nowhere sometimes. We probably had half a dozen times last year when a storm came up and was on us well under that hour and a half threshold. So it's really challenging to look at it. If we have a 6:45 game, to look at the weather at 6:15 or 6:20 and say it's going to be pristine until 8:00, the 8 p.m. hour. That's a really tough challenge. And so you're combining a lot of people having input and a lot of people having a say in the decision with just the timing of it, where you're trying to guarantee like an hour and a half to 2 hours of good weather. It's very, very difficult for us. And as we saw on multiple occasions last year, it's much more, I would say, an art than a science, and it's not a pretty art at that.
Yeah, and I think Chris, fans. Yeah, well, I was going to say, I think fans could be like before a game or just be like, well, why didn't they just cancel it, right? Because if you have an unaffiliated team, they could just literally earlier in the day cancel their game and be done with it if they think it's going to rain. But when it comes to an affiliated team, Dan, I don't know if you want to get into a little bit about the influence that Boston might have in a decision of the game, especially if there's a pitcher or a batter that's down that needs to get hits in or innings pitched on a rehab assignment.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I would say the Red Sox folks are really good to deal with on this because they get it. They understand what we're up against. But it's challenging, and teams hate to stack doubleheaders too. The first few days that you have to call off because of rain, the players are like, oh, we have a night off or a day off. But once you start stacking doubleheaders, that gets really problematic. If you're saying, I remember a game last year, I think it was with Scranton, and their manager who was good to deal with, but had said to me, we just came off the road and we had like 4 doubleheaders in the last week, and we're going to potentially play, a Thursday, a Saturday, and a Sunday doubleheader. Like we can't do that. We don't have the arms. And then our guys on the Red Sox side will have similar comments if we say, hey, let's play 2 or 3 doubleheaders in a week. That throws off your pitching rotation, your ability to get regular innings for your guys, your ability to get at bats to an extent. So yeah, baseball weighs on the decision. It's not, the exclusive only factor in it. We still say, hey, we want to get a big game in. We want to play for people when they're here, but it is challenging when you're trying to balance those baseball considerations. And there's always the classic, they say players like to, they like to say, bang it, just bang it, call the game off. If there's a drop of rain on the radar screen, I think players are much more nuanced than that. And they want to play if they can play. They want to get out there. And it stinks to, have a week in April where you play one game and then you got to move those 6 games to later in the season. No one wants to be playing 13 games in August, in a week in August. So that's challenging, and you have to balance those considerations. But thankfully we have good people we deal with at the Red Sox, Major League Baseball. And for the most part, with a few sporadic exceptions, usually our visiting people are also pretty accommodating on that.
It's a role that no one's ever going to be jealous of, because we feel this like we all want to play. Everyone that shows up to work, everyone that shows up to the ballpark, they want to watch a game, including us. So we're fighting to the last minute. You're fighting to the last minute. Like, how can we play today? And that is what delays the decision being made, is that the fact that we want to play so badly. And then you've got, like you said, everyone just has their phone, the weather app. They're making their own decisions. They're getting on Twitter, and it's comes from a place of we want to play baseball, and that's, I think, in and out every day, like what you're trying to make happen. And until you can control the weather, it's impossible.
Yeah, I think sometimes you have the added element of maybe you did get to play that 1.5 innings and then got hit with a storm, and then you might just be looking for an hour and a half window later in the night that you can at least make it an official game, so you don't have to have these guys play 4 double headers in a week and a half.
And then the double headers are getting rained out, and then they're still piling up. It's impossible.
Yeah. There are a lot of, I would call them compounding variables, and you get this decision-making vortex where, TQ, to restart, you also need that hour and a half window, because a team doesn't want to restart and then also then stop again, and Major League Baseball will step in and they'll say, hey, listen, if you're going to restart the game, you need to tell us that you can play a few innings, which is a totally reasonable thing for them to say, but that's challenging when the night has just been rain everywhere. The forecast looks like a Rorschach test, and you're just looking at splotches all over the place. And how do you make sure you have that hour and a half to play? It's very difficult. And the other thing I would add is, controlling the weather is challenging. Controlling the communications and the word of mouth and the way in which things get out is also impossible. I mean, there was a game last year where, there was a report that came out from somewhere. Someone tweeted, the teams are packing their buses. The Scranton team or the Lehigh Valley team is putting bags on the buses. The game must have been called off. Well, we pack the buses every game on a Sunday in about the third or fourth inning. So the fact that we had a 1 o'clock game and we're packing the buses at 2 o'clock had no bearing on the status of the game. We were waiting. We were in a rain delay. We were looking for that hour and a half window to try to play at 2 or 2:30. But someone, I think, a fan or someone, good naturedly had said, well, the buses are being packed. The game must have been called. And then people start saying, well, the team is not being upfront with us. The team's not being honest. They see us furrowing our brows and they think that we've made a decision. And we try to communicate as rapidly and as decisively as possible. But to the point you were making too, Chris, people come to the ballpark and some people are going to want to play a game no matter what. Some people are going to say, I paid my tickets and I drove an hour from New Hampshire to be here, so we should play come hell or high water. And then there are other people who say, hey, I live, 5 minutes from here. Call the game and play tomorrow a doubleheader. I'd prefer that. So you're also dealing with differing constituencies and different opinions on what to do. And that's challenging, but that's part of what we've signed up for here.
That exact scenario you talked about, that sticks in my brain still, because it was so hard to be like on the other side of Twitter where you're seeing everyone saying like, hey, they're packing up a bus, but to know that we're still trying to play. Like the reason that we haven't all gone home is because we still want to play baseball today.
There's also a very famous example of how packing up the bus and even a team getting on the bus and leaving doesn't necessarily mean that the game has been called.
Is that the New York Yankees?
That's the New York Yankees in 2004. Yeah. They hopped on a bus at Fenway. It was an April rainy afternoon game. They got on their bus.
Larry Lucchino's like, no, we're playing this game.
They ended up playing the game. I think Bronson Arroyo threw at Alex Rodriguez, and Jason Varitek had something to say about it. It ended up getting physical, but that was a game where the Yankees bus was packed. Players got on. They started leaving to go to Logan Airport, but had to get called back to Fenway and end up playing a game because they had a clearing. They were able to get through it.
And I think that everyone owes Dan Rea a huge debt of gratitude that they don't know about, because one day we couldn't play a single inning of baseball. We couldn't get the thumbs up for that. But Dan still gave us a thumbs up for the puppy parade around the warning track for Bark in the Park. Bark in the Park was saved, even though the game couldn't be saved.
As a dog owner, I had to try to make that one happen. So I don't know if the grounds crew loved that one, but again, you balance the constituencies as best you can.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
The dogs can play in the rain. They're not as temperamental as some of our staff or players, but dogs, rain, shine, they love it.
As long as they stay off the grass.
That's it.
Then they're good. All right. What time is it? 3:07. That seems like a great place. Chris, do you have anything else? I feel like you've been quiet today.
Yeah, no, I needed to get to the rain delay stuff, and that's what all the people were tweeting me about. They're like, Dan Rea's going to be on your podcast. Ask him about the weather.
The masses asking about rain. Well, I hope I answered all the meteorological questions and gave you some peek behind the curtain, as ugly as it might be sometimes.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah. Well, Dan, thanks for joining us. Hopefully we'll have you on again at some point during the season. Hopefully talking about how we haven't had a single delay at all.
Yeah.
Decaf,
well,
you're right.
Maybe we do one like during a rain delay even.
We should a live podcast.
That's a great idea.
Some Tuesday night, I'll give you guys a play-by-play every minute of the decision.
That would be great.
Before we let you go, we are headed full speed toward opening day this year. We ask every guest that comes on how their opening day was in 2021, because no one's ever had an answer that it was boring and non-eventful. So how was your opening day?
It was good. It was a blur, I say. I hope that I think we all can maybe just take in more of the opening day this year. I think last year was trying to, hold on to our seat and get through it in one piece. It was a crazy day. I mean, we had, I think first of all, the COVID challenges of having a partial capacity with certain seats that were tied off and social distancing and making sure that people were abiding by these standards that have been put in. That was challenging. That consumed a lot of airtime. And then you're opening a new ballpark. You're making sure that all the toilets flush, all the sinks are turned on, all the concession stands are working. That was pretty chaotic, but it was a great day. I mean, the weather couldn't have been better. I think it was during the pregame ceremonies, just standing out there and saying, wow, we've gotten here, we've made it. We had the governor and the lieutenant governor and the mayor, the city manager, the city council all here, and you're like, wow, this is pretty amazing that we've made it to this point. So I think that was probably the most, kind of smell the roses moment of the day. And then the rest of the day was just run around. So I hope this year can be a little less chaotic and we're able to, now this time have a full ballpark crowd to enjoy. I mean, I said the other night on the Nesson broadcast that like, this is really the first full opening day, first true opening day that Polar Park will ever have.
Yeah.
So let's not lose sight of just how historic that will be and how monumental a sort of accomplishment this is for us.
A full ballpark, a full berm, Summit Street. We're pulling out all the stops, and it's coming faster than you think.
And sunny and 72 degrees.
Yes, Dan Ray controls the weather, so we'll make sure we put in a good word, and that day will
the
be
rain, as we call our group the Rain Trust. Those of us who deal with the rain. There's more than just me. There's a few of us. So if the Rain Trust has anything to say about it, it'll be a beautiful spring day, just like this one that we have out here right now.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, we're all looking forward to seeing the Rain Trust in less action, hopefully in 2022. But Dan, thanks for coming on. Be on the lookout for another episode next Monday. Thanks for listening, everybody.